All right, guys. So I will be releasing multiple videos here in the next few days, just reviewing the movies that I have watched. Well, at least some of them. The first in this video, that's why I'm going to be wearing the white shirt. But anyway, the first of these is McCabe and Mrs. Miller, directed by Robert Altman. I believe his third feature. I think he had made MASH and Brewster McCloud. And so this was made in 1971. For those who haven't seen McCabe and Mrs. Miller, essentially the plot is about McCabe, who is a gambler, uh, sort of a pimp, and Mrs. Miller is sort of the madam of this brothel that they are both concurrently running. They make a lot of money, but eventually that kind of all falls apart at the end. But it's pretty much this downfall of really people that think small time, or well, it's really hard to say. I just viewed this movie yesterday, and I apologize for not having my thoughts all together about it. But a few things to note. Of course, Warren Beatty and Julie Christie in this movie were absolutely excellent, as well as Robert Altman's direction. The way that they made the West look like this dreamy ambient landscape was very different even for its time. Most of the westerns, when you think of western even back then, you think of just this dry arid wasteland of Arizona, or maybe even Death Valley, or to even the Dollar trilogy, where they were straight up recording in Spain instead of the American West. So you kind of thought of it as this sort of dusty sort of thing. But McCabe and Mrs. Miller was strictly is the Pacific Northwest. You know, this is the movie that you think of, although they recorded in Canada, just from looking into the supplements a little bit. It's still like a really nice microcosm of what that area is, I think. So, with that being said, Warren Beatty and Julie Christie were great in their roles as McCabe and Mrs. Miller, respectively. Also, the townsfolk, Shelley Duvall, the rest of them, they were great as well. My initial thoughts upon viewing the movie and after was I didn't expect the movie to be as pessimistic as it was. And this is where I get into sort of spoiler territory here. But in terms of what the themes are, it's sort of like I think a commentary on maybe American capitalism, how little people will never be able, there will always be bigger sharks. There will always be out to get you. If you ever wanted to start an honest business, there's someone that's always ready to take a cut, or someone that's pretty much out to end your life, which is what happens here. But in terms of the way that there's this sort of back and forth between what is good, what is evil, I guess, because the main thing that the townspeople are fine. They were nice people. They didn't really have a whole lot of like complexities like McCabe and Mrs. Miller did, but they just they help out put the climactic scene at the end where they put out the fire at the church. So it really wasn't a commentary on the people as much as it was just if you try to have like grand ambitions, it may be extinguished. I'm honestly not too for sure on it. There's also religious symbolism as well in this movie, especially near the end where McCabe is sort of in the snow and the fire is put out, saves what have you. I'm still trying to work that out a little bit on what that sort of meant. But whenever it comes to the overall scope of the movie, the first half I thought was sort of this this world building type of thing where all the townspeople were just trying to have a good time in this sort of miserable sort of climate, this anxiety as well. It sort of permeates throughout the whole entire movie too. There's also the cinematography I thought was absolutely beautiful in this movie. There's times where you just, especially the lighting, whenever they're in the brothels and such, I thought were just, wonderful. And I think where I have my reservations about the film is the first half is such a world building thing, and there's kind of this sense where Mr. McCabe, who is played brilliantly by Warren Beatty, by the way, was this sort of bumbling guy. I mean, he knows what to do, kinda, but whenever it comes to like managing his own businesses and such, he's, very small time kind of guy. Where Mrs. Miller is this sort of ambitious person, but doesn't really know where to go in terms of what is next for McCabe. So the last half of this kind of devolves into a shootout, which for the character of McCabe being this cowardly, sort of running away from the moment or the action, it does work in that way. But I kind of feel that it really contrasted against this sort of dreamy, this dreamy ambience that the film was providing, and then the latter half that was just kind of a little, not a different movie, but it was the way that it presented this pessimistic thing at the end. I kind of didn't care much for. But with that being said, movies can be pessimistic and I can like them, but whenever it comes to this one, I didn't really care much for it. So whenever it comes to the supplements, I really like the Dick Cavett show with Altman and Pauline Kael on this, as well as there is a lot of making of documentaries on here about this movie, because a lot of people love this movie and it's great. And it's a really good movie to get a different sort of interpretation of the West and how Altman was able to sort of make it not this arid wasteland, but this sort of beautiful but still dour type of feeling in the movie and setting. So there you have it. That's my thoughts on it. If I were to give this movie a rating, it would probably be a 7 out of 10. It's still a good movie, but it still has its problems, especially in the final half section of it. Also a great ending as well, from Julie Christie looking into that glass or what have you, high on opium. But it was still. But this is a really good movie in terms of the setting and the cinematography itself. The story is not really much to take away from there. So it's my first Altman film. So far, so good. I'll be reviewing 3 Women and Shortcuts probably at a later time, but this is the first video, so thank you guys so much.